Hello and welcome to the Thursday edition of Journalist Hangout. I'm Ayodele Uzubaku. Today on the program, Joe Biden on the path to victory after winning Michigan as protests rock world's greatest democracy. Southwest ministers ask federal government to assist Lagos State as Sanwo-Olu set up trust fund to rebuild destroyed properties. ASU seeks swift completion of negotiation with federal government as Labour Minister says government can't meet unions' demand for 110 billion revitalization of university. I'll be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju, Olabisi Deji Folutile, and Dotun Oladipo. So if you are ready, let the hangout start now. Thank you for joining us. It's an election like no other, from bitter campaigns to chaotic debates over policies and personalities. America is deciding the next occupant of the White House. After the November 3 election, Democrats Joe Biden is moving closer to victory in the presidential race as the vote counting continues in the handful of states that will determine the winner. Incumbent President Donald Trump is alleging fraud, having filed lawsuits and called for recounts. The race is coming down to close contest in 5 states after being declared the winner in Michigan and Wisconsin. Biden has a big lead over Trump. Meanwhile, the law enforcement agencies are dealing with protests that have rocked several cities, such as Detroit and Phoenix, New York City to Seattle, with many demanding every vote must be counted after Donald Trump asked the court to stop counting. It's taking a very, very interesting dimension, gentlemen. Wow. Yesterday, I thought by now a winner would have been declared and the president of the United States would have, not like what we experienced in 2016. But we discovered that the mail-in votes for the first time in the history of the United States, over 100 million mail-in votes. And that was the strategy of the Democrats. And from what we are seeing, they started counting the votes on the election day for Tuesday, and that was the first set of results we started seeing, till the mail-in votes started coming in. Until now, counting is still going on in some other states. Babajide, what went wrong? Because a lot of people look up to America as, when it comes to democracy, like a template. It's like a big brother to look up to. But right now, it's not looking like a perfect system. What is wrong?
Well, the human factor will always come in when the price is big. As we saw in Florida, it is possible to manipulate ballots. In Florida, in the year 2000, so many ballots were avoided. And a lot of the Democrats had reason to say that this was done just to ensure that they did not win the election. And at a point, with George W. Bush leading by about 500 something votes, the Florida counting machine stopped working. They had to resort to manual counting of ballots, which is very, very cumbersome. When it was clear that it would take months for them to finish counting manually, the Supreme Court had to wade in to declare the man who was ahead winner of that election. Of course, Al Gore, being a gentleman, he immediately congratulated George W. Bush. But the stakes are higher now. And what some of the supporters of the Republican Party are saying is that in these states where the Democrats are lucky to have their persons as governor, their members of their parties as governor, some of the rules were manipulated. For example, in Pennsylvania, they said they do not understand why counting of mail-in ballots would begin on the day of the election. That should have started before that time. That was against the agreement that was reached. That was the complaint of the chairman of the Republican Party in that state, and is the reason that they've gone to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court wants explanation as to why some of the rules have to change in the course of the game. The truth is, it's not the Democrats alone that used that the mail-in ballots that voted ahead of the election. There were people who were disabled, who realized that they would not be able to line up because long queues were expected. So for some of the people who are physically challenged, whether they were the members of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, they went out and quickly voted ahead of the election day. And there were also people who felt that, look, they could be vulnerable to the coronavirus pandemic, and decided that the best thing was to beat the rush, election day rush, go and vote. But it is clear that more of the Democrats decided to vote before the election, you know. But if it was just the Democrats alone, then it would mean that every mail-in ballot.
No, predominantly, I think it was just a strategy that was adopted. I spoke with Boyega yesterday, and he was like, yes, that's what they were told, and that they told them that on election day that they should come before election day. So most of them left their places of work, left what they were doing to go and vote.
The way
it's like strategies.
No,
that strategy beats the Republican to it. When you see the first set of results on Saturday, Abi on Wednesday, you see that the Republicans were dominating. When the mail-in came in,
see, supporters of Donald Trump, because if you go to Texas, why the argument is not particularly tenable, Texas recorded historic number of mail-in ballots, unprecedented in Texas history. But the Republicans still won easily safe. Now, the point is, Donald Trump's staunch supporters did not believe in using masks. If you look at his rallies, you see people not using masks, not practicing social distancing. He felt that that's the way to show that he's macho, he's man enough and all that, and he was always even ridiculing Joe Biden, that Joe Biden could not move around without a mask. So for some of them to show that they are listening to their man, they prefer to go out without wearing a mask. And it's the reason that thing is a big problem. Coronavirus is a big problem in the US. But a lot of the Democrats who are convinced that this man did not handle the coronavirus well, wherever you see them, they wear the mask. And they didn't want to get involved in that huge crowd. They didn't want to get involved in the huge crowd on election day. So to avoid that, a lot of them have started voting. You know, because in the states, even in terms of registration of voters, Republicans out-registered the Democrats. But at the end of the day, you see, even with all of that, the election is still close. In some places, not even up to 1%. So, there are usually many strategies, many factors that determine who wins. But where a state is very contentious and you still, Joe Biden manages to win by 0.6%, I still think that one factor cannot be said to have caused it.
So, BC, when you look at the way Donald Trump went about it, it was as if he was so sure he was going to, carry the day. But he had a shocker.
Well, it is still too close to call. we can't really say that Joe Biden has won. Even Joe Biden himself in his address has been careful to say that I am not declaring myself a winner, but all I'm saying is that we've been able to win in some places where Trump won very well in 2016, and many Americans voted this year, about over 150 million, in spite of the COVID-19. So but as for dear President Trump, it's also good to show some level of confidence. Election is also a warfare, political warfare, so to say. And sometimes you say things that you don't really feel. You can go out and exude some form of confidence despite the fears you can be having within you. So if you are smart, you don't express your fears, you express your confidence. So we don't really know the factors responsible for all the confidence that the president has been exuding in the real sense of it. But I guess that he also knows that there are issues. Because if you see right from the election day, he's been talking about the fact that the mail-in votes should not be counted after election day. And the Democrats have been saying that every vote must be counted. Trump has been saying that all the votes ought to have arrived the cities before the election day, the mail-in votes. And he was questioning the fact that they were coming in after election had held. And he said that right from the beginning, he's saying that if they counted those votes, that he was heading for the Supreme Court.
He benefited from it in 2016.
Because he also knows the implication of that. So probably that is why. So we might say he's been confident, but I see all of that also as an expression of anxiety and an expression of fear, and the fact that he knows the implication of certain things. And it's playing out really big now, because if we want to look at it from all indications, it's like Joe Biden is cruising in to the White House. And naturally, he also tweeted, remember, on election day, that, well, victory is sweet, but hardly defeat can be very difficult.
Yes.
So you can see that we can say he's confident. Yes, he's handling that defeat for him is a challenge. And if he loses in this election, just the way it was with Clinton when she lost, it was a big blow to her. So it's going to be a very bigger blow, I dare say, to Trump, because of the way he's been carrying himself all this while. Now,
in the recent time, I've not seen American election as keenly contested like this, as in terms of the figures churning out, even talking in terms of the general votes and the electoral college, the way they are running neck on neck. Look at the general votes in those states. Those two candidates, it's not.
Not even 70,000.
It's not clear.
I think the lesson I draw from that is clearly that Americans have gone out to vote because of the interests involved. Those who want Trump out, they've gone out to vote. Those who want Trump to remain in the White House, they've gone out to vote.
Everybody participated.
Records show that in a long while,
they've not had this kind of figure. I'm telling you,
you can't get it. So for me,
said the figures are manipulated. People don't usually go out more than 40%, more than 50%.
So for me,
show you the interest.
like I concluded, I said, look, in this country, we should now also see that when we are angry, it is just 4 years for us to go and show, look,
I'm telling you,
we need to go and vote. And we need
the determination.
Yes.
We need to stand with the votes.
Not just online, not just ranting online.
It's not about staying online. It's now, look, what do we want to achieve? We want this man out. You could see it. You could see the tension in all the states. You could see the fighting physical, where policemen had to step in between supporters of both sides. Meaning, look, we need to outdo ourselves. And they showed that very clearly. In 2016, it was 61.4%. In 2012, it was 61.8%. When you come back home, in 2019, we are 34.75%. In 2015, we are 33.53%. So it shows how we value our opportunity for a change.
And how political some of us are.
How political we can be. During this whole problem about SARS and all the rest, I had opportunity to interact with some people. And I asked a lady in particular, I said, the last election day, what were you doing during the presidential election? She said, I must confess, I was with my husband at home. They were watching what was happening outside on TV. But the Americans have now shown us that no matter what you think, when we believe we need to change the course in which we are going, the ballot is it. And I think that's a big lesson for Nigeria in all of this. I've been saying it, I'm going to say it again. INEC has given us an opportunity again. Registration opens again in the first quarter. We are saying January against the 2023 election. It's an opportunity.
People will
We should get angry.
They will register, but they won't
They
show
won't
up on
even
election
vote.
day.
They register for
We should
maybe
get
their
angry.
place of work, for documents,
Exactly.
for...
Yeah, so that if they
bank.
say they must bring their PVC.
It's in the bank. So we should get angry.
Some
enough.
refuse to even
Chest that
collect
they've never
their
voted
PVC.
in Nigeria.
You register, but they will even not collect
They
their
won't go
PVC.
for the visits. They won't go. So now we must show, when we are angry, that if we need to change the government, it is the ballot.
It's the power that we have. So
That's the power we have. So we should go there. We should, like the supporters of these people.
Yes.
Even if we have to use face masks, we should go out, vote, and stay, let it be counted, and let it be. We might not be as perfect as the US is. Because if you try to do mail-in votes, or you try to do online voting, then you are
at the level of 9 posts. It will be reached.
So you are even sure that you can even be sure that 99% of those mail will be delivered maybe 2 years after. So, but
Well, there was even a farmer in Arizona who saw piles of mail-in ballots in his farm. So there's
If it happens there,
there's rigging over there as well. Say we want to deceive ourselves. But what I don't want is Nigerians now getting excited about little things, little negative things happening about in the world's biggest democracy, and be using it to compare to ourselves. It's not the right attitude. Let us always be excited about comparing ourselves when we can see the right example, not the negative things. What do we think we are doing? Oh, you always talk about Senate climbs, this and that. Even the people who are calling me, residents of the US, that we were deceived by even the video of the food that was being shared. That it wasn't stomach infrastructure. That it was bought with taxpayers' money. That even during the coronavirus, at the peak of it, they shared it. They shared it and they were moving door to door.
The problem was
the only problem was that the president,
yes, he wanted to take the glory.
Yes, because he was the one who fought for the stimulus plan. He was the one who fought for it, and it was a hardly fought battle.
Yes.
Let's realize that. That was why he wanted people to say, yeah, I fought for you to get this. Many people, even our own colleague here, Mayor, said, no, it's not, despite the fact that he's a Democrat, he said, no, that was not stomach infrastructure. But you see Nigerians say, stomach infrastructure happens in the US.
The video was manipulated.
Yes, by those people, and they were supposed to be residents there. So the question to ask yourself is it even only in black neighborhoods that they shared it? Because in these days of social media, manipulation is extremely...
Even when you look at it, the so-called stimulus money that was given, it's from your tax.
It's from taxpayers' money.
Back.
Yes, that's what they are telling me.
Except if you are not captured. But in Nigeria, we make it look as if this thing is free. The government has so much money and it is pushing out. Even when you go to UAE, you go to Saudi Arabia, where the government took it upon itself to pay private sector workers, that money is going to come back.
Yes. It's your
just that
tax
for
card
now,
that will be used.
Yes,
So
it's just that for now, you take this money, use it because
that
you are in
winter.
distress.
Gentlemen,
So we're going to bring
I
it
want
back.
us to talk about the court cases now. And we've had like 4 court cases instituted and in different states, and in between the process. And I know that if it's not right, Mr. Trump wouldn't have embarked on it. Maybe he's allowed. And
It is.
At least some of his own people,
Yes.
he received some reports.
And I know that they're going to dispense of it in no time.
Yeah.
No, I think even on Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court will sit today, but they've invited them. Today is Thursday now. They've invited them to come and explain what transpired. They even complained that in some cases that they were not allowed to monitor the election. That's the Republican Party supporters. No one knows how true this is, but one of the things that also surprised me is the keen battle for control of the Senate.
Yes.
Before I came, it was 47. The Democrats need to get to 51 before they can take control of the Senate.
Yeah.
That they have lost since 2019.
If you see,
But-
the Senate made so many things difficult for Trump.
Yes.
So if you are
No,
not in control of the Senate,
no, it's the House.
It's the
the
house.
House,
It's the
sorry,
house.
In fact,
Pelosi.
his control of the Senate
Pelosi.
Was what helped him.
Was
they helped him a lot.
Especially with the
A lot of
stimulus.
those judges, a lot now, they put so many judges who are conservative, who are pro-Republican Party in the Supreme Court, and some of them very young, so that they can stay there for many a lifetime in the Supreme Court.
That's
So
part of the politics.
it's part of the politics. It's done that. So now the Democrats spend so much money so that they can seize control of the Senate, so that at least if Biden wins, they can help him
Yes.
to push his agenda.
Agenda.
But unfortunately for them, there are just 4 more seats in contention, and they cannot win all of those 4
of them
seats.
more
They need to get to 51.
To have control.
Because two of the other
majority.
members are independents who are loyal to, or
Okay.
who work with the
Let's go.
with the Democratic Party. So we will keep an eye on that.
Yes,
on
I think by
that,
tomorrow
that
we'll be-
race to know
yes, by tomorrow
how it ends.
it should have gotten somewhere. All right, we take this break. When we come back, we'll talk more. It's still Journalist Hangout. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
It's a multi-award-winning program, Journalist Hangout, who are reaching you from TVC News here in Lagos. Ministers from the Southwest want the federal government to assist the Lagos State government in rebuilding some of the public facilities destroyed in the aftermath of the recent SARS protests in the states. Minister for Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, disclosed this to State House correspondents on Wednesday at the end of the weekly meeting of the Federal Executive Council. Meanwhile, Governor Sanwo-Olu says Lagos has received a deluge of offers locally and internationally to help build the state after the recent violence. The governor signed an executive order establishing the Lagos State Rebuild Trust Fund towards rebuilding the states. Babajide, why is it so necessary for the federal government to assist the Lagos State government after the SARS violence, to assist them in rebuilding those properties?
Because Lagos clearly was the epicenter of not just the protest, but the destruction that came in the wake of the protest. Even Minister Fashola and others established that in Lagos alone, 15 police stations were destroyed, not to talk of the police posts and other places that these guys set ablaze. Of course, people's personal businesses were destroyed in Lagos much more than they were destroyed anywhere else. You saw the destruction, the burning of the BRT buses. Even that one alone, BRT buses alone, the destruction, the quantum of destruction that was done there is higher than what happened in many states
Many
put together.
states, because
So
the effects,
and then
still feeling the impacts
and
and
then you,
effects.
you ask yourself, court premises and so many others. NPA that was also set ablaze. And when you look at the place of Lagos, especially when we are talking about non-oil revenue for our country, Lagos is indispensable. There's no state like Lagos. There's no state like Lagos. If tomorrow we are unable to earn a dime, if we are unable to earn a dime from oil, we still have so much money that can come in through maritime in Lagos here. The bulk of the money that we make as a country from value-added tax is from Lagos. So non-oil revenue, Lagos is too crucial for non-oil revenue. It's too crucial for us as a nation. It's the economic capital of our nation. That is why if Lagos were to suffer the kind of destruction, the kind of carnage that it witnessed, it's then necessary for the federal government and other agencies or other maybe corporate organizations to jump in and try to assist Lagos. Remember, even this school called King's College, where some of our top people, the school that they attended was also attacked. So there's a lot that needs to be done in Lagos. The reconstruction of Lagos may take decades before we are through with it, and that's why they were sent by the president to come and observe things, and they went back to say, see, the way things are, Lagos seriously needs to be assisted to get back to life.
BC, the ministers also want the involvement of the military to be investigated. Who should do the investigation?
A private, independent body. Because if you rely on government or any government-sponsored committee, people might not actually get to know what transpired. Already people are complaining about even the panel set up by the Lagos State government. People are saying that Lagos State government cannot set up a panel to probe itself, because Lagos State government, as it were, was also involved in this problem. You know, there was argument about who invited the military and, that. So, having said that, I think an independent panel, for me, will be in a better position to do the job. That way you can know that there is not going to be any form of bias.
Who will set up that independent panel?
Well, that is another thing, because whoever
Independent panel.
Independent panel.
When I saw the composition of the panel that Lagos State set up, when I saw the name of Ebun Adegborua SAN, I know Ebun Adegborua has been having years of running battles with Lagos State.
Yes.
I know Ebun Adegborua on that toll gate matter, on several other court cases.
And you could also see that Lagos State insisted on having the NSAS members, the youth, to be part of that panel. In fact, they really worked hard at it, because those youths were not interested in being part of that panel, but they succeeded in getting them involved. So, which means, from what you have said now, it is the composition of the panel that will determine how independent and the confidence that the public will have in the members. So I think, but for if it is going to be a government body, all these intergovernmental panels and the rest, I do not think that. I think people could have even made some conclusions before the resolutions of the panel.
And if the panel is in any way affiliated to the states,
they
might not be able to indict the governor if the governor
is actually,
found culpable.
Exactly. So I think that independence.
That's why many people said it was wrong to merge the work of the committee that was set up to investigate
The Lekki toll gate.
no, investigate the excesses of SARS
Of
SARS.
with
to
that of
match
the-
its work
That
with
of
the
Lekki toll
Lekki,
gate.
yes, that it
So
should
they are
have been
two different
separate.
things.
Yes, that it should have been separate. But what we have now is the same panel that is doing both work, and people are not really
already
impressed
people
about
are
that.
thinking that they are not sure of what will come out of it.
Okay, the governor is also saying that he has received offers from, the outside international bodies wanting to help, both from within and outside, wanting to help Lagos State. Because I know when it comes to commerce, industry, and goodwill, Lagos State, a lot of people want to be associated with the state.
Well, not just being associated with it. It's because that is where their bread is buttered. Like Babajide said, without Lagos, Nigeria can collapse. Figure says Lagos generates 1/3 of the country's GDP. And that's despite the fact that it's not a major oil-producing state. Meaning that if, like we've always anticipated, Nigeria decides to truly diversify, it must be looking in the direction of Lagos. That is diversification from dependence on oil for our survival. It means the country has to depend almost completely on Lagos, because this is where perhaps everything is happening. That is why all countries, when they send in their ambassador, one of the first places they visit, apart from presenting their credentials to the president, is Lagos, because it's key to everybody.
It's strategic.
Strategic. So if it has 1/3, if it provides 1/3 of the GDP, then it should get that sort of attention. On the Lekki toll gate issue and investigation, for me, considering our history, where we are coming from and where we are, investigating the military is going to be a tough game.
Okay,
So it is
investigating
either-
the military.
Yes, it is either the military is willing to come out with the truth, or it is not willing to. That panel was at the military hospital. What happened? They were locked out for about 30 minutes. So if you need to visit anywhere, you must write. If they want you in, they allow
They don't
you. It
report
is
to
what?
any state government.
No, the thing is,
So
they will even, they wanted to catch them unawares.
Yes.
I understand
That-
why they didn't notify them.
Yes,
So they
that
were
was what
saying,
they
no,
wanted
you
to
didn't
do.
tell our bosses.
Yes.
You know, there is also some level of bureaucracy in the
Bureaucracy.
military, and they
can't
take
just come and
instruction
walk in.
from Oga. So they said, but it will have negated their original plan if they had announced to them that they were coming. So if they kept corpses in that place, they probably would have moved them before the panelists arrived. But in any case, even that place,
Has
there
been-
was nothing there. Is I don't even think, from what we have even read, there was no morgue there. So, and there was nothing that they achieved. Looking at the video, I just saw people prancing about,
Around,
just prancing about the premises, and doing nothing in the end. So the military, in my view, should always subordinate itself to civil authority. The military is not bigger than the rest of the country. The president has to do what is right. Where there is a need for the military to show up to be investigated, they are not bigger than the National Assembly, for example. And I'm happy that on some occasions, when the National Assembly sent for the service chiefs and they stayed away, they were compelled to show up physically, because you can imagine asking service chiefs to show up to explain why we have rampant insecurity, and they now send the people, some of their own juniors. I mean, that's disrespectful. You know, so they said, no, we will not tolerate this. You know, Bajabi Amila, said, no, we will not tolerate it. And they now had to come on their own. They are not bigger than than the rest of the country. So if in this case the military needs to show up, to be investigated, to be questioned, they have to prepare themselves to show up. We should not encourage the military to think that they are bigger than every one of us.
Than the
No,
rest of the
that
country.
will not serve us any good. It does not happen like that in other countries. If the American Senate wants their chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff to show up, he dare not stay away, because they derive their authority from the Constitution. They did not just embody those powers that they have. So I think that the military, because from what we are seeing now, questions need to be asked, and Nigerians need answers to all of what happened. I was reading one post where someone said, now the military made a mistake, that it says that the Lagos state government asked for support. Why didn't they tell them to put it in writing? That if they have put it in writing, everyone will have known that indeed the governor asked to be helped
But then,
by the military.
what is the definition of help?
Does
Does help, you know, if you ask for support, does it mean...
No, that they are saying that they came in or at the instance
of
Of the state government.
That is why when you now hear those stories that, okay, we came in at the instance of the government, and the minister still wants us to believe that the people who went there were not soldiers, were hoodlums who wore army uniform, it then becomes clear that
Somebody is dishonest.
somebody is not just saying the truth, and that we need to know what the truth is. I was also reading that the ICC, that they've begun their investigation in Nigeria. People must realize that, look, when they leave office, there is a court, the ICC, that can bring them to justice. Look at what happened in Cote d'Ivoire. Even Pinochet of Chile, as wicked,
Even Liberia.
you know. So they must realize, and no soldier, no chief of army staff can be bigger than the ICC. They will come for you and take you away. So people must realize that they are watching things. For them to say that now they've begun to investigate the matter, it just shows that we have allowed this matter to degenerate, and international community, they are beginning to put their eyes on it. Because I believe that there's a need to say the truth about what happened, so that we can heal thoroughly, and then we move on as a country.
After the protests, I looked at, before the protests, we had what we call infrastructural deficits in Lagos. And I looked at the wanton destruction of those infrastructure. And in Lagos today now, if you look at the traffic lights, most of them are not there again. And people are not even managing traffic everywhere. And look at what the traffic lights will be able to do on a good day without the traffic officer being there. What kind of protest are you protesting that will take you to public property, to destroy it?
When you ask this kind of
You are
question,
assuming they are
you are
sensible
assuming
people.
that the people that went there, they were people that can reason appropriately.
Like the rest of us.
And like the rest of us. When it comes, that is why you prevent situations like that. Because when things degenerate to that level, that is why they call it a state of anarchy. A state of anarchy is when you cannot determine or control the action of people. And that was what happened. And talking about Lagos State getting federal government help, I think what happened was a major disaster. And if we have a disaster management agency that also takes care of disaster in different parts of the country, I think Lagos State also deserves to be taken care of in a situation like this. Because like you rightly mentioned, let's look at the buses, for instance, the BRT. I counted the number of buses burnt at Berger. I was in my car when I was counting. I counted 21. And I'm not sure that...
Cordoned off the place.
No, after the whole thing, I think 4 days or 5 days. Yeah. So, and I was in the car counting. What I'm trying to say is that I'm not sure I counted everything. Because if a car is moving, the possibility of you not being able to count everything there was very high. So, let's even imagine it's 15. Let's even imagine it's 20.
And they burnt more.
And they burnt in Oyigbo. In other parts of the state, you can imagine that level of
taxpayers' money.
Arson and
the money does not even belong to government. It is our money.
And you know, and the way these people think when they have this, number one, know that those people, the so-called hoodlums, they are on drugs. It is not the youth. It is not the Nigerian youth that are on drugs, like that lawmaker said, but the hoodlums and the so-called hoodlums, the people that we now describe
even elderly people like him, there are some of them too.
Yes, who are hoodlums.
So now they are on drugs, they can't control themselves, and there is this sense of urge to just destroy. When that thing comes from
when
them.
it, you know, it will appear to them and look, I have the power to do this and get away with it.
Exactly.
What they were doing at that time, they felt no, there's no police, there's no law enforcement of any type that can stop us. So let's just do what we like. And we are just we began this orgy of destruction without even thinking, because even things that were not, if your quarrel was with the government, things that were not owned by government, owned by individuals who were struggling,
you went to SPA,
you went after those things, and then you
came
destroyed.
to TVC,
you
went to different,
you know, after emptying shopping malls, after emptying banks, you still went ahead and set some of them ablaze. So how can
how does that help you?
It's just unfortunate. I was discussing with someone and he said,
vandalize ATM.
And no, that one they want to steal money. Those ones are pure rogues. Those ones
just want to get to the root of
the money. How much money is here? Let us steal. I was discussing with someone and he said, we have injured ourselves. Are we not the ones using the BRT? We have set the BRT ablaze. Now, we will all suffer it together. I said, no. That's a wrong assumption. It's not everyone who uses the BRT. The hoodlums, the motor boys, for example, they don't use the BRT.
Exactly.
They do not even want it. Because when Nambode kept saying that he wanted to replace the yellow buses with the blue buses, that Lagos, that the yellow buses were an eyesore.
Just like Fashola got rid of Molue.
Yes, they saw it as a threat to their livelihood, as a threat to their means of livelihood. So for a lot of them, these buses better go. Yes. So they don't use it. So to assume that, they destroyed what they too benefit from. No, they don't benefit from it. How many of us, the big people in government, they don't use the BRT? Even me, I don't use the BRT. It's not every one of us. The people who use it are the ones now pained the most. Because they are now forced to enter buses, and in some cases they become victims of one chance and all that.
And they pay like times 5.
Yes.
What's the BRT?
Yes. So they've made life difficult for the have-nots who are just struggling to survive and benefit from what government has put in place to make life a little more meaningful for them. But we are dealing with people who can barely explain their actions. There's a thin line between their actions and even mental retardation. It's difficult to just wake up and carry out some of the destruction that I saw without being maladjusted. That's just the way I see it.
Even when those that were interviewed at the commanded quarters in Lagos, that's the police headquarters, you could see that they couldn't even offer any form of explanation. Why did you break into this police station? They couldn't. Some people pushed them to do it. Those people went and took the guns and went away.
Exactly.
That was their. So you that we have caught what motivated
You have
you
different
to do this.
motives and
So you only opened up the space. Those who wanted to go in to pick things that were valuable did so. Some people carried chairs of the DPO. Okay, you go and sell it, 5,000. But the man who wanted the gun, the AK-47, has gone in to pick it and some bullets, waiting at the end of the day to use it elsewhere. So it's not really understandable what happened in Lagos. But bottom line is, if you don't fix Lagos in record time, by January,
so then loot. I'm really scared for
Fix Lagos how?
fix Lagos in the sense that these facilities
Security
should be
and
back.
all that.
No,
Okay.
security, November, December, everybody should just be careful. That is it's glaring.
No, it will be tough for
It's
everyone.
going to be tough.
If things continue this way, if we don't find a way to mobilize the security agencies,
Back to
motivate the security agencies, and get them to return to work just the way they used to do it, then we will become vulnerable.
all of
We'll
us.
be so wide open.
All of us.
Anybody could be attacked. You're on your way home. If you are caught in traffic,
traffic.
you know that it is your life is in God's hands, because
So just those traffic robbers.
carjacking is now more rampant than before. Attacking people in traffic gridlock is now more rampant than before, because police presence is not really sufficient.
There's like since last week now, Mile 12. There has been total breakdown of law and order in Mile 12 since last week. Are people going to Ikorodu every day? What they witness in that Mile 12?
There
Those
is
voice lawless. They've
there is a
taken
story
over.
going around now
They've taken over.
that the cultists in
Yes,
Ikorodu,
yes.
they are planning for a major showdown this weekend. So who goes there to stop them? Where are the anti-cultist squad? All of them are gone in different directions. SWAT is not yet in place. Are you going to deploy the soldiers again? It's a difficult one.
You have
Because
to deploy
when you deploy soldiers, you
Some people have to leave their vehicles in traffic.
You have even
left
lost
their vehicles and
you have
they all
lost
run,
control.
abandon their vehicles.
No, your life is more important than your
Yes, it is. Like the French president said, soldiers don't understand law. Even if an enlightened country or a first-class country can say that when we deploy the soldiers on the streets, they don't know law. What they want to do is to bring order. Then you can imagine what happens in Nigeria. It's just what happened in Lekki. Go and find a way of dispersing these people. Ordinarily, you should know that when you want to disperse,
You shouldn't even tell them to go there.
you should.
That's the thing.
So, but now you have
We
even told
warned
them to go.
against it.
Look at what happened. If you see, you would have seen a lot of videos in Osho State where soldiers were deployed, beating people, telling them to roll inside the water.
That's
for
what they
breaking
enjoy
curfew.
doing.
Because that's what they enjoy doing. That's the kind of
Violating
violence they went through in their training.
Yes.
So they want to unleash it on people. So you don't deploy soldiers in normal situations.
One of the security agencies, I was watching the training, and one of the trainees, if I can describe him as such, was I think guilty of one infraction. What did they do? They sprayed tear gas at him right there, and this thing, the spraying lasted over a minute.
Wow.
A human being, somebody that you are training, you spray tear gas. I have the video.
So
I have the video. It's
that's
just
the kind of thing that
many
makes
times
them.
you see what our security agencies do, and you know that, look, it's not every time that we can just embarrass them, because it just seems that even officers, as I said during during our program, I think yesterday or the day before, even officer corps, a lot of them too are just a little better than these other ranks people. Because how can you, because someone did something, you then spread tear gas?
Tear gas, right?
Is the sort of wickedness
So
that we
painful.
see, sort of wickedness that we see Israeli soldiers.
Tear gas, they use tear gas in 1 kilometer from you. You know how painful it's going to be.
No,
Not to talk of
it can cause death.
choke you.
If you, allergic to it or asthmatic, it can cause instant death. It's the sort of thing that we see Israeli soldiers do in the West Bank and all the occupied territories, whereby they spray mace directly into the faces of Arab protesters and all that. You know, but I'm saying it in my country. And the video.
Well, I think beyond everything that happened, the police authorities also should move and talk to their men. You see, what happened is not as if it's a case of Nigerians fighting the police. You get it? And we shouldn't also look at it as if the ENSA protesters didn't have a reason to actually make their complaints. So I think the IG he's been talking to them really, and some of the governors also, even Governor Babajide and Sanwo-Olu and the IG, they met, I think yesterday. The IG was in Lagos yesterday. They should talk to their men. They should go back and do their work. And they should go back to work.
I want them to go back. Honestly, I know we've been begging them. But a lot of them have lost even their habitation. The police stations have been destroyed. Police stations have been destroyed.
Guns taken
Patrol
away.
vehicles destroyed. So it's not, it will take a while. And that's why when the Commissioner of Police made those demands, and the Lagos governor said, yes, we will meet your demands, I think that Lagos should expedite action. As the governor promised, they should expedite action to meet the demands of the police, because he was making those demands because he knew that once those things are done, it will ease their return to work and all that. Well, you are a DPO, you don't have an office anymore. You don't have, where do you operate from?
Before we leave here, before we leave this, which of the properties should be given priority to be reconstructed?
For me, if you ask me, it's anything that has to do with security.
Okay.
That's what we should do first. Because if you go and you buy the BRT buses back and there is no proper security, they will burn it again. If you repair all the banks and you do all of it, those guys who have the guns, they will go back there and destroy it. We've seen cases where armed robbers go to banks with dynamite, blow it up, and do all the rest. Even when we had semblance of security.
And they went to Igbo Sharia High Court.
Yeah, now that we don't even have any,
Want their records,
what do you do?
Because the records there are against them, and they want to
They freed a lot of their colleagues
in
detention, either in prison or in police detention.
So those guys are back on the streets. The first thing you need
You know, I read about a story too that I read a story of another prisoner that was released by these hoodlums who went to kill the IPO.
The person who
the person that witnessed against him.
He went, that was the first one. IPO. I mean, yes, the investigative police officer. He killed him.
Not even the witness.
No. So
security we should face immediately. Especially, we know that in this country, ember months, like they call it, it's not just about accidents. It's also about increase in crime. People who have not earned a living, who want to go back to the village.
Want to end the year on the high.
So those are the ones.
All hands should be on deck. Federal government, state governments, even private investors should help.
Yes.
Spend money and
it shouldn't be only COVID-19 now.
Because it's too important.
Too important. The Security Trust Fund.
By the time even the Dangote refinery comes on stream, that is when we'll know how important Lagos is. Because it's going to be refining not just for local consumption, but for the international markets. So 650,000 barrels a day. That's huge. That's huge. You can imagine the volume of traffic that we'll get along that Lekki corridor and all those places. So a lot of money will come from here. Internally generated revenue will surge in Lagos. We too will be able to save money as a country. The kind of money that we are spending now to import refined products. So Lagos is important. This is where the refinery is. So the government must just come to
the refinery, the ports, the major ports.
Okay, we'll take this break. 1 We'll come back. We'll talk more. There's still journalists on that. Stay with us.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen. Following all nationwide big and impactful stories. What are the news from every perspective? Covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch. The TVC News at 7 and the TVC News at 10 are not like any other news broadcast.
It's the big news hour, the hour for the big breaking stories.
We've got some of the best reporters on the field.
Taking you through as it happened,
It's fast-paced, hard-hitting,
with investigations that matter.
bringing in news that affects your life.
Sports, entertainment, and business news, so you don't miss a thing.
Experience resourceful coverage with depth.
Welcome back. And finally on the show, the crisis rocking the Nigerian tertiary institutions is not showing signs of stopping soon as the Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, says the government cannot meet the requests of the Academic Staff Union of University, ASU, due to the economic situation of the country. ASU is demanding 110 billion naira for revitalization of tertiary institutions, among other requests. With this latest impasse, it is uncertain when the union will call off the strike. Gentlemen, we're waiting. We thought it was COVID-19, you know, that after COVID-19, everybody would go back to their this thing. And I thought ASU was going to even, you know, arrange with the federal government so that our students could go back to their universities and everything. But the way it is now, there's always this thing that will keep them out of the school, out of school. They've been at home for months now.
Since
And
March.
those, their contemporaries in private university, they've resumed and they're moving on with their life. In private university, you could actually say, oh, the person is going to resume so year and graduate so year, specifically because they have their timetable and they will follow that timetable to the letter. But for public school, it's not the case. It's very, very difficult and very sad. What do you want these children, or what do you want these youths to be doing at home, roaming around?
For me, I think there are a lot of issues that we should begin to reconsider. One of it is the good fees that we pay in these public universities. Perhaps we need to look at it again.
School fees.
The fees that
Okay.
you pay. In some, you find them they pay as low as 50,000, 100,000, apart from
Especially
departmental
the federal
fees.
institutions.
Yes, the federal ones. It is obvious now that
sustainable.
government can't fund education for you. Very obvious.
Especially at tertiary level.
Tertiary level. So we now need to begin to look at it. Even if you won't go more than 10, 20% of what you have in the private university, perhaps you need to just top it up a little. That's one. Two, at some point in this country, the federal government said, good, universities should generate and spend their own revenue, internally generated revenue. All the ventures that are in these universities, what happened to them? What are they doing with the funds from them? How do you account for them? Because if for instance, a university that is in Lagos earns good money. It should be able to. It should be able to sustain itself.
Like Unilag,
Like
Lasso.
Lasso. I mean, you like we said of the economy of Lagos. You can't compare it to Oyo State. You can't compare it to Ogun. But at least at the level where you operate, you should be able to do more than you are doing now. In a lot of places before now, as a primary school boy and secondary school boy in Ibadan, I go to the bookshop in University of Ibadan to buy books. It is when you have looked at, for those of us who are around that area, you have looked in the university, which hardly happens, and you can't find books, that you go to Dushot, a bookshop, which is some kilometers away in Okeado. But I'm not sure that if you go to that bookshop now, you are going to find anything reasonable. So what has happened? Are we just saying that what our professors are doing in these universities is all about teaching? Can we not do research work that can bring funding to the universities? Must we wait purely on the government? I'm not saying government should not do its own part, but we should be considering what are the alternative sources that we have. Two is this. I don't agree that as an employee, you should tell your employer how you should be paid. What you can disagree with is if your salary is not complete, you can have a big fight over it. I support that. But if we all work here now in TVC, and TVC says, I want this particular bank for your payment, for the payment of your salary and our allowances. And then some staff will now say, no, I want to go and use Central Bank of Nigeria. For me, it doesn't.
We're talking
hang too
about
well.
the IP.
About the IPPIS and the
Yes.
UTAS. It doesn't hang well. We should get to a point where we'll be able to tell ourselves what the truth is. Over this issue, ASU is saying government has not paid some people, that even those it has paid, they had been short paid and all the rest. The Minister of State for Education is saying, look, there are some that we even overpaid. We are waiting for our money to come back because the system is faulty. Meaning that the IPPIS itself is not working perfectly.
Yes, that's why a lot of them don't want it.
That's the meaning. But in saying that you don't want it, can we perfect the system? Let me use an example. The issue of TSA, Treasury Single Account, has been there for so many years, where you have one ministry having like 200 bank accounts. In Imo State, the state government at some point had over 400 accounts in different banks into which they pay money. So sometimes you find out this money is lost within the system. Some people are just taking it out because they encourage people to go and pay into that particular account that government has not been able to track. This government says, TSA, let's bring everything together. In the bringing together, there were a lot of discoveries, monies that were hidden. Some banks even went to court to say, look, don't take this old money from us now because we are going to collapse.
Olabisi, how should the federal government handle this situation now? Because this is like the federal government is saying that we are broke. We can't pay 110 billion naira you're asking for.
Actually, I think the federal government is at fault. ASU does not just go on strike.
They go.
I said ASU does not just go on strike. They go on strike for a reason.
Okay.
And before they go on strike,
It's
they
as if
will
that's
have...
the only tool they have.
No,
That's the only language.
that's the only language that the government understands.
That's the only language.
Before they go on strike, they will have met with government. Me too, I write a lot against ASU in my column. One day, a professor called me and spoke to me. And after talking to me, this is somebody that is a professor that left school like in the 70s, maybe a few years after I was born. And this man told me that his salary is not even more than 500,000 naira as a professor of 30 years, over 30 or 40 years experience. So it's not as if things are that rosy. And I've seen professors that will tell me
that the federal government, let's even forget about what
They've
the
not paid
federal
some people since
March.
Yes,
March.
yes.
Especially I have some friends in Unilag. They've not paid them since
Now,
March.
the point is that did the federal government reach an agreement with ASU in 2009? It did.
Okay.
When it reached that agreement and it promised to pay and release money to this body, which it has not done since 2009. We are in 2020. That is 11 years after. Now,
Okay. We have a caller on the line. Dr. Okoyemi Ashalu is calling us. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Ashalu. Dr. Ashalu, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Ayo.
Okay.
Good evening, Babajide, and good evening to the other. Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go on.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the discussion on this ASU strike. I want to quickly react to what was said about universities being allowed or being asked to generate revenues by themselves. Even for academic exercise, how much have we done? Most of these lecturers are made to pay for publication, which is a big price for promotion them. And they don't meet out of their little salaries. And if you're talking about universities having to generate revenues, what are they going to be doing? To be producing pure waters, to be producing bottled water, and then, and you're talking like, how much can that fix? We're talking about infrastructural defects in our educational system, in our university system. Most of our students sit on the floor to receive lectures. Some lecturers do not have a place to sit, to write even papers, to do the academic work. And you expect them, what are they asking for? An academic allowance. And then some of them will attend conferences, they pay for these conferences on their own.
Okay.
And, which cannot be compared to their counterparts all around the world.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you, Dr. Okoyemi Ashalu there. Thank you for your contribution. Babajide?
No, let me just respond
please,
to what
make it quick. That time is fast spent.
To respond to what he said about lecturers, being not funding, government not funding research in universities. Recently, in University of Nigeria, Nsukka, a department actually contributed about 350,000 naira to do a project because there was no money available for such. And to quickly respond to what Dotun said, I think all of us are not facing reality in this country. These universities cannot be run. They are not even paying tuition in Nigerian federal universities. They are not paying anything. And it is not possible for somebody to send his child to a secondary school and pay 500,000 naira. And you now send that same child to a university and you want to pay 50,000 naira and you want that child to have access to quality education. It is not going to happen. We need to face reality. We need to decide about how we want to fund
our education.
University education in Nigeria is very key. Otherwise, we will continue with strike upon strike because it is obvious the federal government cannot and does not have enough resources to fund tertiary education as they should be funded in Nigeria.
Judy?
Well, if you look at all of what has happened, you will be compelled to blame the government for all that has happened. This agreement was entered into in 2009. When you take over government, you inherit the liabilities of that administration. Not just the perks of office, the liabilities you inherit. Some of the statements of the people, of some of the aides of the president have not shown commitment Many times when they speak, you see clearly that they simply don't want to meet their obligations. There are about 5 outstanding issues that I will talk about, beginning with the revitalization of the universities. That's the one that will cost 110 billion. If there was seriousness since 2009, they would have been releasing that money yes, and on a graduated basis. By now it would have begun.
Done with
but
it.
Just as it is the tradition with government in our country, and that's why these young people, when government say we are going to do this, they refuse to believe, because they can see how their lecturers have been treated. That's one. If we had been releasing it little by little, we would have been able to take care of that. If we even look at 2009 to now, I doubt if even that money can even solve the problem anymore. If government cannot fund university system, they should let us know. They should let us know. Because
it's not sustainable.
I also think that in some parts of the world, education is free up to the tertiary level. So if we are not going to make education free up to tertiary level, at least we should be able to fund it sufficiently. We are not funding health sufficiently. We are not funding education sufficiently. What are we funding? We are funding the needless, extortionate, and extravagant lifestyle of politicians. That's what we are funding. And everyone can see, everyone complains about how much money we spend on National Assembly. Every budget cycle, look at the subheads, look at what's in the budget, and ask yourself whether some of them cannot actually be diverted to fund education. Because
the same
when they asked the leader of Australia to talk about his 3 priorities, he said education, education, education. That's why they will always be ahead of us, because through education, they stimulate researches that make the world better. Here, we only fold our arms, not because we've not got people who have got brains. We have the issue of renegotiation of the 2009 agreement. It was supposed to be renegotiated after 5 years. That has not been done. University lecturers are still on their salary of 2009. So, are we saying that it is right for people to stay that long on the same salary?
Same salary structure.
Professor,
Yeah.
people
Can
that spend the better part
Is
of
that
their
the
life.
way? Now, is that the way? This
Researching
is the same
and
reason doctors,
studying.
if we are even saying, oh, no, this one's complain too much, that's why we can't keep our best doctors.
Yes.
People will go. The environment is toxic. People will go. They will go elsewhere and make the money. And academic allowance, they asked for it. What did we do? Government said, yes, it will release 30 billion as earned academic allowance, but that other unions within the university
All
system
of them should share.
should also share it. Was that the agreement?
ASU,
You call it,
NASU.
okay, you call it earned academic. The word academic.
Academic.
So you
Are
not
those
saying-
ones non-academic staff?
Non-academic staff,
are they
of
academic?
Nigeria
So
University.
if it bears the word academic, why should people who are non-academic participate? You see lack of sincerity. Then the issue of even proliferation of state universities is still there. No one is talking about it. We can't fund the state universities. and
If
complain so much
federal
money.
government cannot fund the university
Ondo is
effectively,
complaining.
so the Ondo state man is saying that I have
Okay.
3 universities.
Let me go on. The issue of IPPIS was something that even came in later. But it's now even looking now like the biggest problem of all, because government is even planning that it will take lecturers to court over this issue. But the truth is, the IPPIS itself, even for those who have enlisted onto it, they know that it is problematic. Even during at the heat of coronavirus, it collapsed, and many people could not earn salaries. Even the finance minister came out to say that the IPPIS collapsed. Now, in negotiating with lecturers, when you brought this in, you said that when you are going to even release this 30 billion that I talked about earlier, that you will release it through the IPPIS. Was it supposed to be like that? Was that the agreement? Okay. You now said that if the lecturers have an alternative to IPPIS, that they should come up with it. They came up with UTS, University Transparency and Accountability Scheme, or what was the system? They came up with it. What did we do? We then told them that, okay, we will accept UTS, but you must first enlist in IPPIS for us to allow UTS to take over. Of course, they will know that you are trying to snooker them. You want to deceive them, get them enlisted. Whereas you pay salary of people from February to around June or so, without you forcefully enlisted them. Only you pay their salary through that platform. Why can't you do that now? Why are you saying they should first go and enlist? The truth is, if we are sincere, a lot of these problems will not be there. And lecturers, they are saying that government is a continuum. Are we saying that because I've heard some of the people, some of the aides of the president say that when Jonathan negotiated this, he had no plan to pay. We can't talk like this. Are we saying that it is impossible over a period of 5 years, going to 6 years, to on the graduated basis, clear this thing and let us have peace? Other unions within our country, they have since realized that the only way to get something from government is to go on strike. Yeah. You see, the doctors, they do that. Even at the heat of Corona, we were refusing to pay them their allowances. Doctors, we were refusing to provide them PPE that they needed to protect themselves. You know, we lost a lot of medical personnel to Corona. You are putting people's lives at risk, and they were hearing report that 5 billion was released because of Corona. They are hearing report that even international agencies donated money to us. Yet you wanted them to forget about the allowances, that they should not go on strike. It will not stop until government shows sincerity in honoring its obligations. Once you get into, you heard what the Senate president said. He said, when you knew you had no plan to honor your obligation, why did you go into it? Did anybody put a knife to your neck? That's the once you agree that you will do this, go ahead and do it, and let our children go back to school. But to think that lecturers will simply fold their hands and say, well, many people they lose money through this IPPIS. And it's not even configured for university education, because university education, the university system allows all kinds of what was it called, including sabbatical and all that. Foreign academics will come. It does not. The IPPIS has no provision for that. So they were not simply arguing that no, we give us. They are saying, look, this one is not flexible to accommodate all of what we require. And you've said, okay, they can come with UTAS. Go ahead, let them use their UTAS. Why are we doing this to ourselves?
And it's not even feasible for our children to resume back this year. Look at this November.
No, they said that if they pay their salary, if they pay our salary, we'll resume.
But they are not going to pay. They are not
and
going
this
to
outstanding
pay them.
will be still
They
be
won't
there.
pay them through IPP and through UTAS. And these lecturers will not go back to work if you pay them through IPPIS.
They won't.
So that is actually the problem.
I think we should, in a way,
We have to leave it.
like Babajide said,
We have to wrap up.
look at how we run government. The cost of governance is too high in this
Yes.
country. If we free money from the excesses,
Some of the resources can go into
this.
education.
The man who is at
Have
the
we
head
ever
of,
met the UNESCO target?
we cannot.
Have we ever
We
met
cannot.
UNESCO? If we are determined, we'll get there. Let us check some countries on the continent,
And see what
even
they're doing.
Botswana and the rest of them. Let's see how much they devote to education.
Even-
You will now see
even-
that
even
in
for
our
countries-
country we are not doing well.
Gentlemen,
Even for countries
We have to go.
where education, tertiary education is free, it does not mean that the government does not, or where they pay, it does not mean that the governments of those countries don't sponsor
education, even
Thank you.
when students
Thank you
stay.
so much. We have to
Yeah.
leave it there.
Thank you.
Dr. Oladipo. Thank you, Dr. Oladipo.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
On the Eagle Online. Thank you. Thank you. Olabisi Deji Fodutile. Thank you for your contribution today. And the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade Otitoju. Thank you for always being there. And that's our offering today. Join us tomorrow for another episode of the program, 11 p.m. I'm Ayodele Ozubakum. See you. God bless Nigeria.